Hi BookTube, it's Amy. So I'm making this video based on a request I got in the comment section of the new shelf and mini bookshelf tour that I did on Monday. Somebody asked to have a closer look and hear more about my Shakespeare set here. So this is a set of Shakespeare that my grandpa gave to me a few years back. He was downsizing his book collection and decided that he was going to pass this collection on to me. Now, they of course belong to him, but I think he may even have inherited them from someone in the family prior to that. But I could be wrong about that because there is a book plate in the front of each book that has the name Etta O. Martin. And I know who C. Zingerlein is, but I have no idea who Etta O. Martin is. Now, it's possible that there are Martins in the distant family, but I don't know for sure. And in one of these, there is actually written in pencil, Etta Martin, Oneida Castle, which that's kind of curious because I know where Oneida is, Oneida, New York, but I've never heard of an Oneida Castle. And I don't know whether that's referring to a person, to a location in Oneida, or whether this person, Etta Martin, was just doodling and decided to write Oneida Castle in one of their Shakespeare books. So when I first got these from my grandpa, I did a little bit of research online, and this was several years back. At the time, I couldn't find much of anything, but I did narrow down the publisher. So these are published by the A.L.Burt Publishing Company of New York. And I'm sure you'd never heard of that because I hadn't until I got this set of Shakespeare. And from what I could find, they were a publishing house that was in existence between 1883 and 1937. And so at the time, I thought that this set could have been published any time in there. But as I was sitting down to film this video, I took a closer look at them and found something else that helped me narrow down the time frame even more. So it's actually likely that these were published sometime between 1903 and 1930. And the reason I say that is because they have a preface, glossary, and notes by someone by the name of Israel Galansky, M.A. And so I looked him up, and it turns out that he was a professor of Shakespeare at King's College London between 1903 and 1930. And I believe he actually died in 1930. And so it's unlikely that they would have been published after his death, and it's probably also unlikely that they would have been published prior to 1903, since he wasn't yet a professor of Shakespeare at a prestigious university. And so I would suspect that these were indeed published sometime between 1903 and 1930. Now, the A.L.Burt Publishing House closed its doors in 1937. From what I sort of gleaned online, they were hit very hard by the Great Depression and didn't survive much longer after. Now, the original owner, he had a couple of sons, and they tried to start a publishing house of their own, but also weren't really successful. And that's about all I could find about the publisher. They published reprints and first editions of books for adults and for children, what was then called juvenile fiction. And there is a small listing in a Wikipedia article of some of their juvenile fiction, but no sign anywhere that I could find online of this Shakespeare set. But that aside, it's a beautiful little set, and these volumes are actually quite small. They're not much bigger than my hand, really. And so for that reason, I haven't really read them much. I did pick up Macbeth when I wanted to reread that play. But they are small editions with small print, and they don't have the sort of textual notes that I would want when I'm reading Shakespeare. So for that reason, they're more of a decorative set of books, so to speak. Although I hate to say that books are purely decorative, but I have them because they're nice to look at, and also because they've been passed down in the family. So this is Julius Caesar, King Henry VIII, and King Richard II. And out of these, I know for sure I've read Julius Caesar and King Richard II, but I'm a bit iffy as to whether I've actually read King Henry VIII. So each of the editions, I'll pull it down here, each of the editions have this Ex Libris bookplate in the front. And so obviously it was Etta O. Martin who originally owned this set and who put all the bookplates in. And then C. Zingerlein decided that he was going to stamp in his name at the bottom of the bookplate in each of these volumes when he inherited the set. And so each edition has a black and white image. Unfortunately, I have no idea where these illustrations come from, because that's not listed anywhere on the book. And then you have this front cover page with the title, Complete Works of Shakespeare, the fact that there's a preface and notes, what volume of the set it is, and the volume isn't listed on the boards of the book, so I keep them in a haphazard order. I've never actually taken the trouble to go through and get all the volumes in order. And then, of course, the publisher, A.L.Burt publisher, 5258 Duane Street, New York. And this is interesting. If you look closely, the top of this, it's just a frame, but the bottom border, there's actually two masked faces in the corners. And they don't have any other illustrations. They each have a small introduction of 1 to 3 pages. The play, not really any textual notes throughout, which is how they've managed to fit 2 to 3 plays in each one. But there is a glossary at the end that I guess would help you if you're writing a paper. So for instance, if you want to find all instances of amazed and confused, you'll find that on page 85 here. Charge, expense. And then there are some notes on some of the plays here on the back, but nothing particularly helpful. So here's another volume, King Lear and Cymbeline. Illustration from King Lear. And I'll just go through and show you the illustrations at the start of each of these. There's not really much else to look at apart from these illustrations. So this is from Midsummer Night's Dream. When I was in middle school, they put on a production of A Midsummer Night's Dream, and my friend and I actually tried out for it, but we didn't make the cut. And I remember it wasn't a particularly good production, as you would expect when you have 11, 12, 13-year-olds trying to put on a Shakespeare production. And when I was in high school, in the English curriculum, each year we read a different Shakespeare play. So grade 9 was Twelfth Night. Grade 10 was Romeo and Juliet, which I despise to this day. And it's mainly because the play is so absurd to the point of being annoying. Macbeth was read in grade 11, and that remains my favorite to this day. And then Hamlet was read in grade 12. And it's interesting because although there were guidelines, it was the English teachers from my high school who ultimately determined the curriculum. And so in grade 9, we read Twelfth Night, The Chrysalids, and one other book I'm thinking. I think it was a collection of essays because it had Orwell's essay, I think, about shooting an elephant. And then grade 10, as I said, was Romeo and Juliet. But that year, we also had to read To Kill a Mockingbird, which I thought was all right. But then I was subjected to Life of Pi. I hate that book to this day. And then in grade 11, we read, as I said, Macbeth. But we also read The Kite Runner and A Picture of Dorian Gray. And I liked everything we read that year. And then grade 12, as I said, was Hamlet, which was all right. My English teacher actually had a skull on her desk in tribute to Hamlet. And that year we did an independent study project, but we also read Robertson Davies' Fifth Business, which remains a favorite of mine. So that's the Shakespeare set. This is a bit petty, but I find it kind of annoying because when you set the books like this, you would, of course, want the title to be up, but when you do that, the titles on the spine are upside down. And so I almost wish that the title on the spine were the other way around. Instead of the letters beginning at the bottom, I almost wish that they, were printed on in some other manner, because it's just awkward when you try to shelve it, because either you've got the gold embossing on the front sitting at a direction that you wouldn't want, or you got the titles themselves either upside down or sideways. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this 13-minute long video of me talking about this Shakespeare set. If you know anything more about this A.L.Burt publisher, be sure to let me know, or if you have come across this set of Shakespeare somewhere else yourself, I would love to hear about it.